extraordinary lengths people go to in their pursuit of money and wealth. But what if I told you that there was something even more addictive and intoxicating in stacks of cash? uNkululeko Mkhize, a man once revered as a humble and successful businessman, but not everything is as it seems. He quickly became entangled in the dangerous world of the taxi industry, not as a driver, but as inkampani, a hired hitman. That role, dangerous and dirty, became his stepping stone. Soon, he transitioned from enforcer to owner. A taxi boss with ambition far beyond the roads. He expanded into tow trucks, tenders, and drugs, each venture more lucrative and more dangerous than the last. Using his influence and allies, he attached himself to one of the province's most liquid companies, Richards Bay Minerals, which not only pays over $1 billion in taxes annually, but also pays a multitude of exploitive contractors and beneficiaries.
Mining giant Richards Bay Minerals remains closed for the second week now. The Rio Tinto subsidiary shut down operations last week amid violence in surrounding areas. 2 employees were shot when a group of men attacked them en route to and from work.
In Richards Bay, uNkululeko's name became associated with power. In Durban, it echoed in the halls of business and crime alike. But like any intoxicant, power never satisfies. The more he had, the more he wanted. And in the end, that hunger and ambition would prove fatal. Hey, it's Mike. You can call me Ski. And today we're taking a deep dive into the chilling story of uNkululeko Mkhize. In the quiet beginnings of Richards Bay, few could have predicted the storm that was coming. Contrary to popular belief, uNkululeko did not emerge from nowhere. Mkhize, who worked for 2 Gaba-linked bus companies, was the father of both uNkululeko and Matula Mkhize. A school dropout, uNkululeko left Zululand to work for one of the country's most prominent and feared taxi families. The Gabas, the same people his father had worked for, related to former President Jacob Zuma, have been linked to many crimes in Durban, including inciting the 2020 Durban lootings.
There is this thing that we are the relatives of Mr. Zuma, and therefore, because we are the relatives of the former president, then people have got this notion and this thing in their heads that we might be sponsoring the violence or we might be financing it.
They were also linked to the assassination of rapper Keenan Forbes, better known as AKA.
According to the states, the amount of over 800,000 rand transferred from businessman Mfundo Caba to Kwabeni was payment for the hit.
AKA was tragically hit in what looked like a coordinated assassination. All caught on CCTV outside the Wish restaurant on Florida Road in Durban. His friend and celebrity chef Tibbs was caught by stray bullets and unfortunately did not make it. Now, while that is another case I'd like to get into, it's beyond the scope of this story. Very early, it became evident that Mkhize wasn't just looking to survive. He wanted to rule. He entered the deadly world of the taxi industry, working as a hitman, allegedly carrying out hits ordered by his higher-ups. Ruthless, calculated, and feared, he earned his stripes in blood, and with the fear he commanded and the bodies he left behind, Mkhize laid the foundation for an empire. He later became a taxi boss, but that was only the beginning, as Mkhize became associated with members of the Mboyazi family from the Mbonambi tribe. This and his association with the Gaba family helped him take control of taxi businesses in Richards Bay, something unlikely to be allowed if there wasn't a close relationship with them. He expanded into tow trucks, another field known for being run by criminal syndicates. A well-placed police source said Jude Mboyazi, a member of the Mbonambi clan, which is a stakeholder that also features as a beneficiary of the community trust structures Richards Bay Minerals established as part of its broad-based black economic empowerment transaction in 2008. Jude, an important figure in the clan, helped facilitate Mkhize's rise in business and was a silent partner in his towing company. Police sources said Jude Mboyazi initially bankrolled Mkhize's Lagos towing. Also in 2020, a violent incident occurred at the premises of Lekos, where a 28-year-old man was shot dead. Mkhize was arrested in connection with this incident, but claimed he acted in self-defense against armed intruders. He claimed that he squared up against 3 men and shot one, but a local security company disputed his version. The post-mortem reports and CCTV footage contradicted Mkhize's self-defense story. Later, a security guard on duty the night of the Lekos murder and 2 men who accompanied Mkhize were shot dead in separate incidents, eliminating potential witnesses against him. This incident, among others, drew law enforcement attention to Mkhize's activities. He also got into construction and allegedly the drug trade. Power was no longer a goal, it was an identity, and it wanted to be known. Filming himself and his friends hosting lavish traditional ceremonies. Several mini documentaries were shot of various events hosted with great fanfare by Mkhize. The films show heavily armed men and a host of celebrities. With growing influence came new opportunities. Leveraging his network and his name, Mkhize penetrated the lucrative world of government tenders. He scored contracts with Transnet, South Africa's freight logistics giant, using what insiders called mafia-like tactics. Richards Bay Minerals followed, another gold mine of tenders. The mining company has grappled with significant product theft involving sophisticated criminal syndicates that have infiltrated its operations.
Well, it seems it's not just load shedding that is halting this economy's wheels. Mining giant Richards Bay Minerals remains closed for the 2nd week now. The Rio Tinto subsidiary shut down operations last week amid violence in surrounding areas. 2 employees were shot when a group of men attacked them en route to and from work.
There does appear to be an orchestrated campaign, and it seems to be from different factions within the community who want to be first in line for jobs and for the procurement contracts.
The tender mafia is very much alive in South Africa, and this specific case is one of the biggest signs of it.
When mining companies deal with communities, one group puts up their hand and says they're the community, another group puts up their hand and says they're the community. And then, you're also dealing with traditional leaders, you're dealing with factions from political parties, quite possibly. You're dealing with people who claim to represent the community's interests here, the community's interests there. So it can all become very, very, very jumbled up and mixed up, quite frankly.
Richards Bay Minerals operates on the ancestral land of the clan in Kwambonambi in KwaZulu-Natal, which makes their relationship very complex and significant.
We're in a war. You want to fight or you want to win?
The conflict centered around succession and leadership legitimacy. In 2006, a year after his father died, Sibusiso Mbuyazi was appointed as inkosi, or for any non-South Africans, the chief. He ruled over the Mbonambi clan. The biggest of the 4 tribes whose land is mined by RBM. 2 years after this, as we had discussed earlier, RBM would formalize its multi-billion BEE deal, which included significant community benefits. But just 2 years later, Sibusiso, who was not only the chief, but also founder of the Mbonambi Community Development Trust, was dethroned in a process facilitated by the provincial government under Premier Zweli Mkhize. Removed and replaced by younger half-brother Mkhize, Sibusiso would take the matter to the courts but would later die in 2012. His widow Thembile would continue pursuing the courts about the matter on behalf of her husband. But while this was happening, in 2017, Martin Mbuyazi would be appointed as administrator of the tribe pending the dispute. His appointment was meant to bring stability, but in hindsight was aimed at securing particular business and political interest by releasing more than 70 million rands in community benefits paid from RBM, as well as for who controlled them. There were various court processes leading up to 2018 around Thembile's right to act on her late husband's behalf, but she eventually won the case, and the full judgment supported her right to pursue a review of the Premier's original decision to withdraw her husband's appointment. Martin Mbuyazi was recognized as standing chief in March 2019. Now with this additional position, Martin took effective control of the Mbonambi Community Development Trust, becoming chair and completely replacing the trustees appointed by the late Nkosi Sibusiso. After the Constitutional Court's decision, The ANC provincial government, then led by Sihle Zikalala, attempted to mediate, but the violence continued. Community leader Meshek Mbuyazi was gunned down in December 2019, shortly after attending a meeting with Zikalala. Meshek, a contractor at RBM, had led a delegation representing Stembile, who was too feared to attend. In the 2 years that followed, the Queen awaited for Zikalala and the provincial government to give her a certificate of recognition, acknowledging her as regent. That call never came. When RBM was forced by the Department of Minerals and Resources to release withheld funds to the trust in August 2021, the Mbonambi Community Public Benefit Trust, chaired by Martin, paid him nearly 1 million rands in travel costs the day after the money landed in its account. It also paid over 5.8 million rands to Mkhize. In 2022, the property fund bought a 5.5 million home in the Mzingazi Golf Estate in Richards Bay, which online records suggest is occupied by Mkhize. Around this time, Martin Mbuyazi fell out of favor, and his security concerns were such that it appears he fled from the area. The deposed chief's widow Stembile says Martin has not been seen by the community since 2022. Stembile said the government announced Martin, who claimed to be a Mbuyazi, though it's known that he is Greek. A family member of the assassinated Meshek Mbuyazi told journalists that people have been killed for money that was meant for the community. The family member said that ANC figures had forced government interference in the traditional leadership disputes in order to get their hands on the money. According to this family member, Meshek had threatened before he was killed to flush out the mafia's hijacking big RBM contracts. In February 2024, Fosco procurement manager Sfiso Ncube was shot while driving home after work. Gunmen pumped 25 AK-47 rounds into his car. He was the latest in a string of high-profile corporate murders, primarily directed at RBM. Ronin Zimande, Meshek Mbuyazi, Nico Swart, and after fallout with Mkhize, Jude Mbuyazi himself were among those hit in earlier cases dating back to 2015. Police and private security sources who spoke to investigative journalists on condition of anonymity said community representatives fought over the RBM benefits and that uNkululeko Mkhize was among the most ruthless actors in these disputes, which still threatens RBM's planned 10 billion rand Zolti South expansion. With this much power and control, some would sit back and enjoy the finer things. But that wouldn't be enough for someone like uNkululeko Mkhize. And as his fortune grew, so did his appetite. A voice note that became infamous surfaced.
Cha ndoda, ngithi ngisebenzisa inamba yakho la ngoba yona namba engiyitholile. Ngicela ungidlulisele le message kubafowenu enisebenza nabo nonke ukuthi yonke into la iBay, Mr D, Uber Eat, Take a Lot, yonke leyo nto leyo kanye nani ngolesibili, yonke leyo nto leyo kusuka manje njalo makuphela inyanga isithuthuthu nesithuthuthu noma imonto nemonto ngifuna 100 rand kuyona kusuka manje. Ungisizeke ungidonsele bona ngendlela abantu bakho singakubangi lokho engikushoyo. Uma kukhona othi ufuna ukungazi ungitshele ngizofika lapho ngonkululeko kaMkhize.
He demanded 100 rand daily from every taxi. Even street vendors weren't spared. Everyone paid, or else. He was very ambitious, too ambitious, always expanding his reach from Richards Bay to Durban. Mkhize lived in the affluent Zimbali coastal estate located north of Durban. In addition to his Zimbali residence, Mkhize alternated his stay with another home in the Mzingazi estate in Richards Bay. Beyond his residences, Mkhize's lavish lifestyle was evident in his public display of wealth. In 2021, he gifted 1.5 million rands in cash at a bridal shower, just to show he could. This created headlines and practically went viral, but not all that attention was in his best interest, but he'd later come to find out. On September 19, 2023, a brutal massacre rocked Richards Bay.
KwaZulu-Natal police are searching for at least 5 suspects who this morning shot dead 5 people in Richards Bay. Witnesses say 4 people got out of a car and shot at the victims in the parking lot of a local shopping centre.
The mass shooting that claimed 5 lives occurred in the parking lot of the Bay Centre in Richards Bay Central Business District, where 4 of the victims were pronounced dead at the scene and a 5th succumbed to injuries en route to a local clinic. A parking lot turned into an execution ground. Police sources said that 2 of the 5 killed were drug dealers. The others were innocent bystanders. Within hours, investigators traced the threads and found a familiar name, Mkhize, now a prime suspect. Literally the next day at dawn, on the 20th of September, the Hawks and the NIU moved in. Upon entering the property, police officers were met with gunfire from the suspects. When the smoke cleared, Mkhize's lifeless body laid alongside former policeman Sabelo Cele. Following the shootout, police recovered 6 firearms and over 1,000 rounds of ammunition from the residence. The IPID was notified to conduct a thorough investigation into the incident. A Sunday Times story said that police were actually at Zimbali to arrest Mkhize for the 2020 murder at the Lekos business premises. Mkhize had an inside track with local police, which is probably why the Lekos shooting was not properly probed. By the time he died, just 32 years old, Mkhize was a feted businessman, drug dealer, and cash flush extortionist who drove around in convoys, often accompanied by as many as 10 heavily armed bodyguards. Mkhize's story is more than a rise and fall. It's a mirror reflecting a system where violence rewards and where influence replaces integrity. His legacy is now a cautionary tale. Power unchecked corrupts absolutely.